This is the Friday Night Fever Afterburn, sponsored by Peden Heating and Air Conditioning.
Welcome to Friday Night Fever Afterburn, week 11 of the high school football season. Technically the final week of the regular season, but like we've mentioned all week long, this is technically one more week before the playoffs, one more gap week that the FHSA installed due to all the hurricanes, specifically in the Big Bend and South Florida areas where they said, hey, we need some more time to make up some games before the playoffs. So there's a week 11.1 or 12, whatever you want to call it, next week. But this is the final full week of regular season action here in the Panhandle. We got a lot to get into, a lot of excitement for teams making the playoffs, a lot of disappointment tonight with some of our local teams. But let's go ahead and dive into those scores. Go ahead and tell us the first
so
list.
I was at Walton and Bluntstown, and they finished 48-7. So that kind of knocked off Bluntstown's 4-game winning streak.
Right in half.
Yeah, and then Bay and Bozeman. Bay took that one 41-7 in a need to win for Bozeman. Well, Mosley taking an unfortunate first loss of their season to Florida State High, 30-27. And then Mariana staying undefeated against South Walton, but they were trailing at one point. So
yeah, we're like, have they
Walton
trailed at all this
I know,
season?
that's what I was.
Sure if they have.
I didn't know.
But they did win big. Chipley hosting the Lafayette Hornets, and they got pummeled tonight. The Hornets rolling 48-7. Last week, Lafayette rolled past Franklin County, and Franklin County's lost the last few games. But then to do that against Chipley tonight, that's a real tough one for the Tigers. In the Battle of the Bulldogs, Freeport winning 42-21 over Liberty County. Our friend John Brock, who I see now in the comments, is saying there is no answer. There was no answer for the big receiver from Freeport. Obviously, that is Julius Miles, who is a phenomenal future Division I athlete over there. Port St. Joe rolling 45-0 over Jefferson County. Holmes County winning 36-32 over the Bobcats from Alabama.
We have undefeated Cottondale, and yes, Cottondale and Mariana are the two only undefeated teams remaining. So Cottondale over Joshua Christian 64-6. Vernon and Baker taking that one 41-7. North Bay Haven and Sneeds winning 33-6. And Wewa Hitchka and Central taking that 34-28.
Right, and then we had just the one Thursday night game, Franklin County, Asola Christian, I believe 10-0 on the season with that 28-12 win over Franklin County. Like I always tell you, let us know in the comments, your favorite moments from the night, the teams you're rooting for, the teams you were also disappointed with this week. So if you're disappointed in the refs over in Tallahassee, let us know about that too. But we will get to that game in just a little bit. We're going to start with what was our Friday Night Fever game of the week, which ended up being a 41-point victory in Walton's favor. But let's go ahead and head to Definiak Springs for that one.
I did think that this game was going to be a little bit closer, but once Walton's defense kind of understood that they pretty much go into that Kurt Ellis at quarterback a lot, and so they're pretty big on running. And so once they figured out that was what they dominated in, and they knew going into the game how to stop that. And so they had to go into, Tristan King has to go into that, which the play will come up soon, but he has to go into that throw game, which I don't know what his percentage was, but I do know as of right now with the group that they have over at Bluntstown, they are relying more on the runners, the running backs, and Tristan as a runner as well. So I just think Wells, he was strong. His O-line, shout out to the O-line. They made it so easy for Peyton C. and Wells to just kind of dominate that offense and run it up.
Right, and you're talking about the offensive line. We already got some love down in the comments for the Walton offensive line. And, when you got a player on that offensive line that's probably going to be a Division I football player, and then a lot of guys surrounding him that have been veterans in that group, making a lot of good play. A good quarterback can sometimes only be as good as his offensive line.
For
And we know as
sure.
Wells Bettenhausen is one of the best quarterbacks in all of North Florida, but that offensive line sure making his job easy, especially against a Bluntstown team who loves to bring the pressure. They love to, make a quarterback uncomfortable. But Wells finished the night with over 200 yards passing, 2 scores. He also had a rushing touchdown. He was spreading the ball a good bit. They had Luthane
Yeah,
ended
Dylan
up
Luthane.
rushing for over 150 yards, I believe, tonight. So they were spreading the we said, Bluntstown's the rushing team and Walton is the passing team.
Yeah.
And tonight, Walton was a balanced attack all over the place.
Yeah, they kind of had to. I think they realized that Bluntstown was also aware of their scheme, so they had to mix it up a little bit, rushing, passing. That was kind of just a mix-up, but Bluntstown, unfortunately, was not able to get as many yards as they normally do with their runs. So.
Yeah, and this, again, we mentioned coming into this game tonight, Bluntstown was sitting at the number 11 ranking in the rural classification, so just on the outside looking in at potentially a first-round home game. Walton, they're the 7 seed currently in Class 2A. I don't know, even with the win tonight, if they could surpass, I believe it's Swanee, that's the 6th seed in Class 2A. It's a very top-heavy 2A Region 1. So I don't know if even with a win tonight, Walton would move up from 7 to 6, but they're for sure in the playoffs. They're definitely a lock. There's no way at this point that Walton will not make the playoffs. The only thing would be, who are you playing in the first round? Are you going to be playing Pensacola Catholic? Are you going to be playing
Mariana?
Yeah, probably not Mariana. Mariana would be in the first round, but Gadsden County, as Mr. John Brock is mentioning down there, they are not technically a local team. Gadsden County used to be West Gadsden, East Gadsden. They merged together. They're just outside our area. That's going to be covered by Tallahassee, but Gadsden County is phenomenal. They really might be the best team in North Florida this year. Now that we've seen a Mosley go down, we've seen a Niceville lose. Gadsden County is probably the best team in North Florida.
But if
this
Walton
year.
can get that home field advantage, apparently their grass is magic because they haven't lost, and once again, they didn't lose at home.
They don't lose at home very often. I don't know if it's mathematically possible for them to get a home game at this point, but I'm sure they would love that.
They would love it.
We're going to move to the Bayhigh and Bozeman game before we get to that very heartbreaking Mosley loss down there. But Bayhigh, they ended up rolling in this one. This was just a hard game to watch in the first half, especially in the first quarter. Just sloppy on both teams. Turnovers, penalties. I literally asked the refs, can you please stop throwing flags? Like, I got somewhere to be tonight. Like, I gotta get back into this. Stop throwing the flags.
Did you really?
I did. He was laughing. They kept throwing the flags. They weren't listening to me at all. It was just a sloppy game on both ends. Bay finally figured things out. And, it kind of felt like, man, Bay should be up by 3 scores, heading into the second quarter. They weren't because of turnovers and because of penalties. It really was just sloppy on all fronts, but it never felt in question. Bozeman's offense was non-existent. They couldn't move the ball at all in the first half. They couldn't do anything with the ball. And again, as we see, Bay struggled with holding on to the ball, so that kept them in the game for a little bit. But eventually, the Tornadoes went ahead to go into the half with a 20-0 score. Zay Morgan was slinging the ball all over the place to all of his mini weapons, Joaquin Waters, and the one right before the half, which was my favorite play of the night, was my favorite play of this game, that is, when Zay Morgan threw that beautiful ball, you're about to see it in just a second, to Amari Johnson. And Amari's not a very tall guy, but watch as he leaps for this ball. That man was way up in the air for the touchdown, and that's as time expires. You got to love that going into the half. Bozeman officially eliminated. They will not be in the playoffs. They had a chance. They were the 9th ranked team in their region in that same Class 2A that we were just talking about with Walton and Mariana. They're in the same classification. They were ranked number 9 coming into this week. Baldwin lost last night. Baldwin was the 8th seed, so there was a chance. You beat a Bay, Baldwin loses. Maybe mathematically Bozeman jumps into that 8th seed. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So Bozeman's season is done. Bay, as we mentioned earlier, they're going to finish the season at 500. They're going to finish at 5-5. I say finish the regular season. They will be in the playoffs. They are in Class 3A, but I believe they can't have any other seed other than the 8 seed. I think that's where the rankings have them. The district championship is going to clinch them a spot in the playoffs, but Bay will have the 8 seed in the Class 3A bracket, and that is going to give them a very tough matchup in the first round of the playoffs. I'm not sure who that is. I can look that up later if somebody wants to tell me down in the comments who's the 1 seed in Class 3A Region 1, but that's who Bay is likely going to be playing in the first round of the playoffs on the road. They won't be at home. So that will be a very tough one. But Bay is in the playoffs. Bozeman is not in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's just the way the ball rolls. The biggest game of the tonight as far as Bay County and implications and playoffs, Mosley and Florida High. Mosley going for their first 10-0 season since 1981. They didn't get it done. This actually happened 3 years ago in 2021. Mosley was 9-0. They had Gadsden County, who they were heavily favored over at that time, and they lost to Gadsden County to spoil their perfect season in 2021. The same thing happens tonight in Tallahassee. As you see, obviously a very chippy game. A lot of people that were very, very as we already saw, the first comment in our entire thing tonight was the refs in that Mosley game are the worst I've ever seen. That is all. I have to say, because I did watch the final few possessions of the game, I wasn't able to watch a whole lot of it, but there were some questionable calls. But like I've said before, if you're in Niceville, Niceville's going to get the calls. If you're at Escambia, like Bay was this year, and that game was handed to Escambia on the final play, you're going to get calls in Pensacola. If you're in Tallahassee, Tallahassee teams are going to get the calls. There's Niceville fans who, when they came to Mosley a few weeks back, they're like, man, Mosley got all the calls. That's just how it works around here. You have to win convincingly. Mosley did not win convincingly. They did not put up enough points. They did not hold on to their 21-9 lead in the second half. So really, you hate to see it, because this is a team that I genuinely felt was a state championship, at least Final Four caliber team, who would be hosting through the Final Four, all the way up through the regionals to the Final Four. Mosley would be the number 1 seed in the region and have to have Niceville come to them if they made it to the region final, most likely. But now, with this loss, Mosley will be the 2 seed. It does not matter that Niceville beat them. Mosley will, or that they beat Niceville, excuse me. Mosley will be the 2 seed. Niceville will be the 1 seed. So that means if you want a chance at the Final Four now, because of this loss, Mosley will have to go to Niceville. So obviously, this is not what they wanted. This is not what you wanted as far as Bay County getting a region final match. They haven't had a region final match here, other than Bozeman at the 1A level last year. They haven't had a big school region final match here in a very, very long time. So you just gotta hate to see this. I know you're a big fan of these Mosley Dolphins this year. This one's just tough to watch.
It is, and you know what? That play where Sammy's helmet came off, I want to move that guy off of him. What?
She's like, I'm coming after that.
Yeah, what? I don't know. I feel like you said, the home field advantage is a thing, and they did not, the game was not close enough, or it was too close to actually say that the calls were the ones to actually, you don't know if the calls would have, how it would have changed.
Right.
I don't know.
And that's what I'm saying. You can't blame the calls, because if you're Mosley and you're the number 1 team in your classification and you're going to a 6-3 Florida High, yes, Florida High is an annual perennial powerhouse, but they are not that juggernaut of a team this year. They're 6-3. Yes, everybody on their schedule is a playoff team. But if you're Mosley, you have to come into this game, I am the better team. I am the favorite. I win this. To lose this, it's very disappointing. Not just for you're not repeating history, but you're not getting the region finals. And you were the better team. Despite the calls, it does not matter. Lakavian Jackson scores with a couple minutes left. You take the lead. Your defense allows them to march down the field. Yes, there was a few questionable calls. Yes, I from my angle, I thought that Mosley stopped them on that goal line stand where they scored with 6 seconds left. But none of that matters because you allowed them to get back
Right.
into that game.
I just think also with the caliber of the team that Florida High is, like if they played at Tommy, I don't know how much it would have been different. It might have.
Right, and that, like I said, different regions have different. If you're playing in Pensacola, you're going to have a tough time over there. If you're playing here, those teams are going to have a tough time. If you're playing in Tallahassee, you're going to have a tough time. And I see Mr. Welch saying that there was an interception that would have sealed it, but the refs called him out of bounds. It's just tough. You hate to see it because Mosley should have won this game. They had the lead. They let it fall through their hands. And you would have loved to see the refs be fair in these kind of circumstances, but that's just Panhandle football for you. That's just how it's going to roll. And because you didn't assert enough dominance, you're now looking at a 9-1 team, a 2 seed, and the road to the Final Four runs through Niceville.
I can see Mosley though taking this and being like, okay, we had our loss.
Right.
It's not going to happen again, and keep going. Use that as momentum.
Right, and just to that exact point, I am not saying that this Mosley team is done for, that they can't win in Niceville, that they can't go on and win. Because, like I've said, this is the best Mosley football team I have ever seen. I think that this Mosley team has a chance to go to the Final Four. I think they can win in Niceville. I think they can. I'll say it right now. I think they can win in Niceville. But it's going to be a whole lot more difficult. And now having that home field advantage in Tommy Oliver Stadium, it's real rough. So it's hard to see what happens from here. But
we
Tommy
believe in them.
Whitten, he wanted his team to get tested. They were tested and they lost. So now they got to recalibrate before the playoffs. So they will probably be the 2 seed and host the 7 seed, which can't remember. I knew it was Middleburg was the 8 seed, but I'm not quite sure who the 7 seed is there. But let's go ahead and get to another team who did finish with a perfect regular season. Out with the bad, in with the good. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about those Mariana Bulldogs. Start us off talking about Mari Clement and those guys.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think honestly, RJ Mays, he had no one open, so he took it himself and gets taken down. But you know what? I was a little bit proud of South Walton. This team is very young and they have not maybe had as much success as they have had in the past, which I wasn't here for, but I've heard. So now the fact that right there, first points over Mariana, I think everyone in that stadium was probably like, oh, well, they're here to play. They're here to play an undefeated team, and they gave them a run for their money until they didn't. But at the beginning, I think South Walton really was not scaring Mariana because I don't see them as a team that gets intimidated, but I do think it made them kind of be like, okay, well, we're not going to roll over this team like maybe we have in the past, and we need to maybe actually get it together a little more, which they did, finishing the game big. But yeah, RJ Mays and Amari Clemens always being the duo that gets it done, even with Sergio Womble. So I don't know if we have any clips of him in there, but yeah, of course, Amari's going to get that touchdown like he always does. So I think that was probably, I don't know how many touchdowns he had tonight. Do you?
I'm not sure either, but they ended up putting up, 54 points? So I'm
like that.
Sure
54.
He added up quite a good bit because in the last few weeks, Mariana's kind of been rolling to the finish and not putting Amari out there as much as would get him those 300, 400, yard games that he sometimes does. But I'm sure after tonight, when we look at those stats, we'll probably see, Amari's probably still leading the state in scoring and rushing as he has all year. And RJ Mays earlier this week, I think he was the all-time leading passer in Mariana history. They do a lot of running in Mariana, so to have somebody that can sling the ball like RJ does, that's pretty impressive.
Is he a basketball player, baseball player?
Basketball, baseball, football. RJ does it all. So phenomenal athlete.
I love it.
He does everything. And then when you got probably, in my opinion, the best running back in all of North Florida. I haven't seen the guys down south, but he's the best running back I've seen in Florida, and heavily recruited by Florida State, all those teams. Don't be surprised when he's not committed when he's playing for the Gators, when he's playing for the Noles in the next few years. Don't be surprised if you see him on Saturdays, maybe even future. Sundays one day. But yes, I think Coach Glover told me the last time they had an undefeated season, they went 7-0, and I think he said that was in the 50s. So fact check me if you know Mariana football. Fact check me, but literally
Wow.
70 years ago, the last time they finished undefeated. So you say what you will, about strength of schedule. They play a lot of teams around here that aren't as strong, but Mariana is 10-0.
They've never had that record.
What's that?
10-0.
That I know of. I don't know the history
Okay.
dating, but like I said, Mariana's a 100-year-old high school, so it's hard to go back and find those record books. It certainly is tough, but
Yeah.
they finished the season 10-0. They will likely be the 4 seed in Class 2A. So if that's the case, it's a home playoff game. I think either way, whether they're the 4 or the 5 seed, I think that they'll host, because I think whoever was the 5 seed right now, I can't remember who it was. I think Swanee was the 6. I believe it may be Taylor County is a 5 seed. I don't think they're winning their district because Gadsden County was in their district. So Mariana should host in the first round of playoffs, regardless of if they're the 4 or the 5 seed. I see Mr. Gary is not very happy with my comments about the refs. Nate is the best ref crew around here. I'll give that to Nate. They definitely do a great job over there. But yes, some refs are in it, just to have a paycheck. Some really like their jobs. Some certainly have a local bias, but we'll leave that be. Who is Mariana's biggest obstacle? Taylor County, Gadsden. I think if you have to eventually end up playing Gadsden, yeah, that's their biggest obstacle. I haven't seen Gadsden in person this year, but they have just been rolling everybody. I mean, steamrolling everybody. That might be the best team that Gadsden County has ever had, and they've had some phenomenal football teams over there. Gadsden and Taylor play for their district on Monday. Okay, so I guess not technically the district champs yet. Not technically. We'll see how that game goes based on how the rest of the season's going. I think you got to favor Gadsden County, but we'll see. We'll see. If Taylor pulls off the upset, then I stand corrected. But just before we get into the rest of those playoff games, let's go ahead and check in. We won't stay too long on it because I know if you're a Chipley fan, you probably don't want to have to rehash this game again. But let's just real quick look at Chipley. This is a Lafayette team that went over and steamrolled Franklin County last week. I'm like, okay, Franklin County, they've kind of been dropping some the last few weeks. Maybe Chipley can stand up to them. They didn't. They ended up losing again by 40, and it was a tough outing for the Shipley Tigers, especially when you're 7-1. Currently heading into the night, Chipley was ranked 9th in their classification, which would give them, was putting them borderline for hosting a game in the first round of the playoffs. This will probably drop them and put them on the road. So that's going to make things really difficult.
Yeah.
Really, really difficult for the Tigers. They'll be on the road, and because there's no regions this year, it's not like you're going to be on the road and playing another team in your region. You're going to be on the road, and you're going to be playing a Hawthorne, a Madison County, any of those teams that are just absolutely phenomenal down there in Central Florida. But again, a tough loss for the Chipley Tigers. We do not have next week's games because there's only, as of now, I haven't heard of any other reschedules. As of now, there's only one game of our local teams next week. That is Port St. Joe and Bluntstown. Port St. Joe is kind of on the outside looking in. They're in, kind of at the top echelons of the B bracket, whereas Bluntstown is right in the middle. We mentioned they were kind of on the line for hosting a playoff game similar to Chipley. With that loss to Walton. It hurts them, but I don't think it eliminates them from the chance of hosting a playoff game. They would certainly have to win convincingly over St. Joe next week. We'll see how that goes. That's a Thursday night game. We will not have Fever or Afterburn next week, but we will be back in 2 weeks for the first round of the playoffs. Second round of the playoffs, we'll keep you updated as the playoffs move on, what that's going to look like, and how long Fever's going to go Afterburn, just like we do every year. Sometimes we're able to go further because teams go further. Sometimes all of our teams get eliminated and we call it a short season before Thanksgiving.
Let's keep all these teams going so we can keep having Afterburn, please.
Yeah, no, we
keep
love
winning,
Afterburn.
please,
We love
Panhandle.
Afterburn. Before we go, I will tell you where all of our teams sit when it comes to the playoffs right now, because we've talked about a lot this year. This new A bracket, B bracket. Our team's going to accept the B bracket. For the rural classification, it's all different this year. 16 teams make it in the A bracket. That is what I will call the rural playoff. The B bracket, that is the consolation tournament. It's not for a state championship. They said it's not for a state championship. Well, you can call it whatever you want. It's the B bracket. The A bracket is the playoffs. As of now, before tonight, what it looked like coming into this was Union County, the 1 seed. They would host 16 seed Brantford. We had 8 seed Osceola Christian hosting 9 seed Chipley. Osceola might rise, Chipley might fall. Not sure there. We had 5 seed Chiefland hosting 12 seed Lafayette. 4 seed Pahogee hosting 13 seed Williston. Of course, these are teams from out of our area. We had 11 seed Bluntstown because they were the 11th ranked team on the road at Jay. If you're Bluntstown, I wouldn't be too upset about that one. You're staying in the Panhandle. Jay's pretty good this year, but I think that's a manageable game. Heading into tonight, Holmes County, a 14 seed visiting Madison County. That would be a very tough first round matchup for the Holmes County Blue Devils. And then we had coming into the night 7 seed Cottondale hosting 10 seed Fort White. But like I've said, man, you're undefeated. It is an undefeated season for Cottondale, but the strength of schedule is going to hurt them. You played a Joshua Christian Academy from Jacksonville that had played 3 games coming into the night, and the teams that they played on their schedule were some schools that I've never heard of in my life. I don't even know that. I'm surprised that they're real schools, but that strength of schedule is going to really hurt Cottondale. They could potentially see themselves sliding out of hosting in the first round. I would hate that because I would love to see the Dale hosting a first round playoff game. When you got all that talent, when you got Cam, when you got Jock, when you got all of those phenomenal athletes, we would love to see a home playoff game in Cottondale. So hopefully the undefeated record keeps them in the home field advantage. But like I said, that strength of schedule is going to be brutal, and we'll see how it all plays out and when those rankings come out in the next couple of weeks. And then we had 2 seed Hawthorne, the back-to-back state champions, hosting 15 seed Franklin County. That is what it was coming into this week, before rankings, before the losses, before everything was shifted. So that's what it looked like heading into this week. We'll see how that shakes up this upcoming week. But as far as Class 2A, that we've already talked about, it was Gadsden versus Baldwin. Mariana hosting Florida High. So Florida High, the team that just beat Mosley. We had Mariana hosting Florida High. Florida High could rise. I'm not sure. They might jump Mariana, but it doesn't matter because they're the district champions. So Mariana would host. We had 3 seed Bowles hosting 6 seed Taylor County, and 2 seed Pensacola Catholic hosting 7 seed Walton. Those two obviously rivals. Pensacola Catholic put a beating on Walton earlier this year, the same team that eliminated them in the playoffs last year at Walton. So that would certainly be a tough battle for the Braves. Other than that, Bay, as the 8 seed in Class 3A, would be on the road at 1 seed Rains in Jacksonville. Rains is always phenomenal. In Class 4A, we had, coming into this week, 5 seed Arnold on the road at 4 seed Pine Forest. That's over in Pensacola. We'll see how everything shakes out. Arnold did not play this week. They wrapped up their regular season. They had that a week 11 bye week, so we'll see how that goes. And we had 1 seed Mosley hosting 8 seed Middleburg. That's likely going to be 2 seed Mosley hosting probably 7 seed Mainland or Fleming Island. So we'll see how that goes. We'll get to that when we get to that. But that's where we stand right now. That's what things look like. When it gets to the B bracket, we'll have all kinds of teams in there. We'll have the teams that are, not in the playoff picture in the rural that I had talked about. Your Liberty Counties, your Weewas, your Vernons, all of those schools that I did not mention previously, they'll be down in that B bracket. Coach Tanner Jones at Port St. Joseph, they're a storied program with a lot of state championships, and he said, yes, I will accept the B. he wants those seniors to play some more games, some chance to win more games. So he said, yes, I'm going to accept. I'm going to be playing down in the B bracket if we that's where we end up being. I see Liberty traveling to Marathon. That has been the biggest absolute question mark in my head since the realignment of the classification. The fact that they put Marathon in the rural classification. For anybody who doesn't know, Marathon is in the Keys. They're in the Keys. They're rural. They used to be in, the private schools classifications 1A, 2A. They're in the Keys. Liberty, if you have to travel to Marathon in the first round, if I get the draw and say, hey, you got Marathon in the first round of the B bracket, I'm gonna go, you know what?
Let's take a vacation.
I think I'm good. Like, well, I appreciate the invite. We'll give Marathon that first round win. So
wow.
Just a yes, Coach Nichols, get the gas money ready. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens, but I pity any team that gets the draw for Marathon. Hopefully they have to come and play one of our teams in the Panhandle. See how they like it. But
I don't know enough about the Florida Keys in order to know if they had high schools there. So the fact that they do.
So, and you know how we were talking about how Miami is a 9-10 hour drive? And
yes.
You were like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The Keys are further. Just further south.
There's a bridge.
Like the Florida Keys that go off.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where mainland is down there.
That's
the Florida Keys.
How long you think that drive is from here?
10 to 12 hours. Depends on who's driving. And if you're on a bus, it could be even worse.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
Yes.
It
would be maybe a nice vacation. You could incorporate that. Go down, win or lose. Just spend the week down in the Florida Keys. I see... don't let this football distract you from the fact that Liberty County is playing Moorhaven in the Final Four on Monday. Go Bulldogs. That is Liberty County Bulldogs. Karli was up in Bristol yesterday checking in with girls. They're singing. They're ready to go.
Yeah.
I love that team, too. I've been down in Winter Haven the past 2 years, win and loss. I would love to go this year. We don't have any money there. We don't have any money this year. They're not letting us go. We won't get into that. But I would love to be down. I would love to be down in Winter Haven cheering on those Bulldogs. Hopefully they can bring home a victory. And, Gary Starr says 14 hours. Yeah, Miami's down at the bottom. Keys are even further. Like when you look at Florida, it's like Florida finishes here. The Keys jut off even further. Yeah. I'm sorry for any of you Florida people who know all this stuff.
He's explaining it to me.
Just trying to explain it to our friend from Arizona over here. So, but like I said, no football next week. Don't come on here next week. We won't be here. We will be here the following week for the first round of the playoffs. We'll post the playoff brackets whenever those come out. So whenever, if those end up being next weekend, when everything shakes out, when everything gets posted, we'll post that. That'll probably be a weekend story. Karli will probably have that next weekend. But we'll post it. We'll tell you who's playing who, what that looks like, who's traveling down to Marathon, Florida. We'll let you know all of that. If you want to see the highlights of tonight.
It's closer to Cuba than Liberty
Before we go,
County.
Arnold High School football coach Jason Griffin, the FACA District 2 Coach of the Year 2 years in a row now. Yeah, that's because last year he took his team to the Final Four. This year, we didn't even mention Arnold tonight because they weren't playing this week. But Arnold and the playoffs, Coach Griffin took them to the Final Four last year. Playoffs this year. Go Arnold Marlins. If you want to watch the highlights from this week's games, WMBB, that is where you can find them. We'll have them there posted shortly. We will not see you next week, but we'll see you the week after in the playoffs.
Yep.
Have a good night.